One. Welcome back to the Armchair Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Coach Sheffer, and today we have a special guest. We have Coach Kelly Lee, who is the founder of the Ground Strike offensive system and the head football coach for the Eastern New Mexico University Greyhounds in Portales, New Mexico. Did I say that right? Portales?
You got it.
Awesome. Because I'm definitely not an English major or a language major, so I always seem to mispronounce words, Coach. But thank you
No,
for
I
coming on,
understand.
Coach. Thank you for coming
I
on.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. It's always nice when I can get another triple option coach on the podcast.
Yeah, spread the love.
Exactly. So we're just going to jump right in, and this question that is one that I ask every coach. I am fascinated by hearing every coach's story. It seems that we all have our own unique path to where we are today. So, could you take a moment to tell us and the listeners your football and coaching journey? Basically, how did you end up where you are today?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a coaching family. My father was a head high school coach, so I grew up on the sidelines. My first job was the ball boy. Then I moved up to taking stats. I remember I used to take stats and call them into the newspaper, and I'd get $15 a game. So I'd call it into three newspapers. Next week, I'd get $15 from each of them, make $45. And back in the '80s, that was pretty good money for a third grader, fourth grader, whatever it was. So I grew up on the sidelines. Learned a lot watching my dad and his teams and his coaches. Had some great assistant coaches, great teams, and obviously played a little college football. Was a quarterback many pounds ago, and then I went back and I started coaching with my father for a few years, and then I knew I wanted to get into college coaching, so I left there and I went. Was a graduate assistant coach actually here at Eastern New Mexico University. I worked for a legendary coach named Harold Bud Elliott. He had been the head coach at UT Arlington when they had football Division I. Wishbone guy, was really tight in with Bob Noblet, Fisher DeBerry, and those guys, Ken Hatfield. So kind of learned the triple option, the old triple option from him, and kind of the old way of doing things, and really fell in love with it. We didn't always have the best players. We didn't always match the eye test as far as talent, but our players were really good at doing our system, and we had a lot of success and won a lot of games that probably people thought we shouldn't have. So that kind of stuck with me. Had an opportunity to go back to high school as an offensive coordinator at Alamogordo High School, did that, and then reunited over with my father. Worked for him for a couple more years, and then I went to New Mexico Junior College as the offensive coordinator. 2 years there, went up to NAI school out in Nebraska for a couple of years. And then my wife's career, got a job. She was working in professional baseball, and I kind of followed her back to New Mexico. And she was working with a AAA team there. So there was a high school that was looking for a head coach, athletic director. So I was fortunate enough to get that job. And it was Valencia High School in New Mexico. And it was a really rewarding situation. We took over a program that was 1-9. I think we went 6-5 our first year, 9-3, and then 12-1, and almost made it. We lost in the semifinals, and that was a lot of fun with those kids and growing with that community, and had a lot of success. And about that time, one of my friends got the head job at Eastern, a guy I had GA'd with, and Eastern was kind of struggling at the time, and he wanted to run the option, asked me to come along to install it, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get back into college football. So I went with him, and same thing. We're taking an old program. I think they were 2-9. 2 years later, we went 8-3 and won the conference. And then he moved on to another job, and I stayed here and took over as the head coach. And that's kind of my journey and career football guy. Been around it forever. I love the history of football. Actually, my dad's got a library of books, and I've read them, and run and shoot books, original books, the old Houston splitback beer, the old spread from the 40s, the single wing stuff. So I kind of a football buff, so to speak, and I really love the history of the game and those things.
Well, that's awesome, Coach. Now, Eastern New Mexico, that is a D2 school, correct?
Yeah, we're a D2 school. We're playing the Lone Star Conference. So we're a New Mexico school playing in a primarily Texas conference. So it's one of the probably 2 or 3 best Division II conferences in the league. Very competitive, and we've kind of found our niche and been pretty successful in there against some really good programs.
All right. So most of the listeners on this podcast are high school coaches. We do get the odd, D3, D2 coach here and there. Um, Now, could you take a moment to describe to us what the daily life of a Division II coach at Eastern New Mexico is like?
Sure. Um, you can't have any ego because you're going to be a little understaffed. So you're going to have to do a lot of things. It's not as glamorous as people might think coaching college football. We get to coach some great young men. We get to play in some great venues. The competition's phenomenal, but we go wear a lot of hats. I'm a head coach. I'm also an offensive coordinator. I also coach our quarterbacks and fullbacks. And all my staff, I got great assistant coaches, and they wear a lot of hats. Our offensive line coach, Andrew McCraw, he's our assistant head coach. He's coordinator of academics. Our other guys do travel, and we all do laundry, and those things. So just about everything you could think of, you do. I would say as far as task, it's a lot like being a high school coach at a smaller school. And you get in Texas or some schools and they have 20, 25 assistant coaches and things are real specialized. But, there's plenty of high school staffs where there's 6, 7 guys maybe. And it's not that much different, at the Division II level where you got to do a lot of things. You're doing study halls. We're in there. We have one strength coach. So he can't work out 100 kids by himself. So we're involved with the strength program. We're in there where they're lifting. We're running the kids. And obviously then you have the recruiting piece. And when you don't have a lot of coaches, you're spreading your net pretty thin, broad, and you're trying to recruit a lot of areas. So I would say best way to describe it is you're going to wear a lot of hats, and no job is too small or too big.
Coach, I know exactly what you're talking about. We here in Virginia, we're at I would say, average size school. We're only about 1,000 students, and we have 7 coaches on staff, like you were saying. So,
Yeah.
I'm the offensive line coach, but I also coach, half of our special teams, and I also, help with equipment. I do the field stuff. Yeah, I know
Oh yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. You got to wear a lot of hats, and I'm a teacher too. So,
That's right. That's right.
that adds on top of
No,
that.
you get good at multitasking and you get really efficient with your time.
Oh yeah. I'm the type of coach that even though I'm the assistant coach, I have my individual scripted.
Right. Right.
Because I do that in my classroom too. Because if I don't do it, I don't know what I'm doing.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
Um, the next question I have this off season, especially since I've had a lot of time to sit down and read. I've been doing this big deep dive into leadership and culture, and I'm very interested in everybody and all my guests' leadership styles because everyone seems to have a different style.
Right.
So could you take some time to describe your own personal leadership style as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's always evolving a little bit. I think the important thing is, don't try to be someone else. It's easy to read about Nick Saban or take some other a self-help group, and you try to do that. And I think we can steal all kinds of ideas, but I think you want to be authentic. You want to be who you are, because I think your staff and your kids will relate to that. Because if you're being authentic, you're being yourself, then you're going to be able to build relationships. So I think leadership is about building relationships with your coaches, building relationships with your players, and getting to know the kids on and off the field, and understanding who they are as a football player, who they are as a person, what drives them, and that helps you being able to motivate them. But the big turning point for me recently, I've really been studying the Naval SEALs. They're obviously phenomenal leaders, and read some books. And I think something that's really stuck a chord with me is, we all have a lot of sayings, and we're going to post those things. And you need to have those things, and you need to have direction of what your goals are and your non-negotiables, and all the catchwords, your mission statement. But what the Navy SEALs said, your standard is basically set by what you allow. It doesn't, whatever you say is great, but what you allow is your standard. That is who you are. So accountability is big, and just really analyzing it, taking ownership over it. When something goes wrong, what could we do better? How could we fix it? Not, who's to blame. Yeah, you got to figure out why it went wrong, but that's just part of it. Now let's figure out what we can do better. Let's learn from it. Let's grow from it, and really not worry as much about what we're saying, but what we're allowing, and with discipline. And I think that's, mass encompassing. So that's kind of been our focus the last few years. It kind of drives the culture in our program is making sure, what our kids do on the field, what they do off the field, that's the standard we're setting, and that's matching up to the direction we're wanting to go. So that's kind of how we approach leadership, and kind of the way that it's most comfortable for me as a leader.
At Eastern New Mexico, you are currently running the triple option. What is the story? You mentioned it a little bit in your coaching journey. What's the story behind you bringing the triple option to Eastern New Mexico?
Sure. I think going all the way back to when I was a graduate assistant, I played in an offense that was very much like the BYU, the old Lavelle Edwards BYU offense. My offense coordinator in college was actually Steve Young's backup and coached running backs at BYU when they won the national championship. So I kind of learned that, and I'd studied the West Coast, and I kind of thought that that's what I wanted to do, short, controlled passing game. And I got to Eastern and had the opportunity to learn this option. And one of my jobs as GA, we didn't have all the fancy computers at that time, is I charted all the plays and the production of the plays. And we would get in the wishbone and we'd run this double ISO. So like against the 50 front, you're doubling the nose, your tackle and tight end are blocking the 4 and 9. You got two backs ISOing up this linebacker, and we'd hand the ball off. And something that year we ran it like 28 times, and we averaged 0.8 yards a run. You know what I mean? So we were running what I thought, to me at the time, looked like a really good football play going right at them. But we weren't good enough to overpower people. But that same year, we ran the triple option 200 times. So by turning that 4 loose, turning that 9 loose, getting people up to backers and safeties and letting our quarterback read that, we ran that 200 times and averaged 8 yards a play. So here was a play where if we just turned and hand the ball off and said we were going to be better than you, we couldn't make a yard. But as soon as we ran the option, we were averaging 8 yards a pop. And when I did that stat, that always just resonated with me. If you turn people loose, you can account for everyone. You can get people on the second and third level blocked. And if you can find a quarterback that can read that and distribute the ball and your kids buy into it, you got a chance. You got a chance to be competitive against anyone. And I knew that throughout my career, I might be at places where, I wouldn't have the best players. So and actually had some opportunities at high school where maybe we did have good players. I could really see, even with great players, how explosive it could be. And we've had some great ones here at Eastern and had a lot of success. So that's kind of what drew me into it. And then I just went around studying. I wasn't in. Most of the guys that I was connected to through Coach Elliott were the older guys kind of getting out of it. The wishbone guys, they weren't the flexbone guys. So then we had opportunity to get with Air Force quite a bit during that time. So we were studying what Fisher DeBerry and those guys were doing, which was really innovative with their flexbone. And then I kind of started studying the Paul Johnson tree, those guys, and what they were doing. A lot of that was initially off the TV, recording, but then you had opportunities, you become a college coach and get out there, you can clinic with them and go watch them practice. And then we just kind of, through the years, have put it together, stolen bits and pieces from all of them and kind of made our own system. And I think it's helped because as you get through different people, they have a way of doing it, and this is the way they do it, and you do this, and then these guys do it this way and do this. And we weren't really tied into one system or other, and it allowed us not to be dogmatic in our approach, and just really study and say, look what they're doing, this is good, and they're doing it a little different, and this is good. And of course, we, necessity, have had to adjust some things to us. So really kind of put that together in a way where we could be multiple, but not overload our kids, and be able to adjust and evolve through years. And, we'll have a scheme that we throw away for a few years, and then we bring it back, and then what the great thing about being in a system for a long time is you kind of understand why something worked, why it didn't, and you're able to evolve and adjust. And I'm to the point, you want to coach something you can adjust. If you're coaching something you can fix when it breaks down, you got a chance to make adjustments during the game. If you're coaching something you don't know, when it breaks down, you don't know what you're doing, and that you're looking at your kids and they're staring at you for an answer and you don't have nothing. Great thing about being in a system for so long is you usually have an answer, and you can point them in the right direction and get going.
That's awesome, Coach. I recently met Coach Rodriguez and Coach McLeod from the Mesh Point podcast. And
Yeah,
they do a
great
great,
guys.
yeah, they're great guys. They do a great job. Their podcast is one that recently I've been listening to weekly. Um, I don't run the triple option at the high school that I'm at. I'm just the offensive line coach, so I don't have a say in all of that. But meeting them, they told me about some guys to talk to, and you came up on the in the post podcast interview when I was asking, hey, who are some guys I should reach out to? Who are some guys who are doing the triple option really well? And they pointed me your way. And one of the things that they mentioned, because I had asked them, what are some of the passing stuff that you guys do? And they kept mentioning you guys and your ground strike offense. So what the point I'm trying to get to here, Coach, is could you take a little bit of time to describe how your triple option offense is either similar to or different than what a lot of people see as the traditional flexbone offense?
Sure. I think you kind of led into it is we probably throw the ball more. I'm not one of those guys who wants to set the goal to lead the nation in rushing. That's never our goal. We have done that. I don't really keep track of it week to week where other teams are. I will compare us to other teams that run this system on a total offense. I want to see, because, if they're doing something to get a lot more offense, you say maybe they're doing something we need to look at. And through the years, when you can look at the total offense, I'm pretty proud of where we've been when I look at other teams that run the option. But I think a big part of that is because we're not afraid to throw the ball. And I feel like when you run the triple option, there's a lot of benefits. You can control the clock, you can eat up yards, you can have long drives, you can milk the clock. There's a lot of reasons a lot of people run it. But one of the best things that come with running the triple option is you get one-on-one coverage all the time. You basically through motion or any kind of play action can get the middle safety out of the field. And so you're going to get one-on-one, whether it's one-on-one outside with your wideout or one-on-one with a slot on a safety or an outside backer. So, in the NFL, you can get paid millions of dollars if you can create one-on-one matchups with your best players, right? So in the option, we've got one-on-one anytime we want to take it. Now, the trick becomes how do you become really good at running the football and still spend enough time to throw the ball well. But what we try to do is be just as precise and deliberate with the way we coach the passing game as what we do with the run game. And I think there's some great option concepts and there's some things that have stood the test of time, but I go other places sometimes and I hear them and it's like, we run this route, and you kind of ask about coaching points. Like, well, he kind of goes here and he kind of goes here and this, and it's like, you would never run the triple option and tell the slot on your load, you're kind of just going to go here and block this guy, or on your arc, you're just going to arc out there and block him. It's very deliberate, personable. So I think two things. One, if you don't coach the passing game the same way your kids are going to feel like it's not as important. And if you don't have that same detail, you're not going to be successful. So we try to really be detailed in that. And then the other thing is we have found through our study that the more we throw the ball, usually if we're throwing on our own terms, not because we're behind or we have to, the more successful we are because it creates bigger plays and it also loosens the defense up. So we found a lot of times triple option teams are really big about being on track. So for us, a big throwdown is first down. And that scares a lot of option teams because then they're 2nd and 10. Well, what we found is after we throw on 1st and 10, we generally can come back and pick up 6-7 yards on 2nd down because we've loosened up the defense a little bit. And then we're right back into a makeable third, or where we can go third. If it's 3rd and 4, we can run 2 yards, get to 4th and 2 and make it. Because, in the option world, you go for it a lot on 4th down when it's 3 or less. So we always feel like we're kind of in 4-down territory anyway. So we're not afraid on 1st and 10 to take a shot, and really we feel like we can execute it too. It's just, a lot of times it comes down to protection because our linemen are always as big because what we need them to do in the option game, they're more athletic guys. They're not as big. So that kind of sometimes hurts in pass protection because they can get bull rushed and things of that nature. But I think that's the thing you'd see most. We carry a good 3-step game. If people are playing off, we'll throw a hitch on 1st down. We'll take those easy yards. As part of our flex bone. And when people moved from the wishbone to the flex bone, it was all about really the concept was now you have 4 receivers, you could run 4 verticals. The defense has to defend you. Even if you're not great at it, there's that threat. You could at any time go 4 verticals. Well, and then you get to some option teams, you never see them ever run 4 verticals. So, is it really a threat if you never run it, So I think that's what makes us different. The other thing is we probably play a little bit more with a tight end than maybe some of the guys coming from the Paul Johnson way of thinking did. A lot of times when they get with a tight end, they go tackle over. Now they have to put a wide out on the backside as a tackle, which is good for the passing game. But you go unbalanced. How often are you actually going to run back to that other side if it's a wide receiver there? But we carry a tight end, so if we want to go tackle over, we can put a tight end on the backside, or things like that. So we're a little more like the Air Force because we'll run the belly play as a big play for us, and we like that tight end in there against 4-3 teams because it creates another gap over there that they have to defend. So those are probably the 2 things that make us a little bit more unique, a little more tight end game and throwing the football a little more.
Coach, this is great stuff. I appreciate you talking about this stuff. The next one, this is one that I ask a lot of triple option and, wing T coaches. I want to know about how you adapt your offense to fit players of different skill sets because, from one year, especially at the high school level, one year to another, maybe one year you have a quarterback who's not very fast, but he's got a rocket of an arm. And another year you have like that true dual threat kid who can do both running and passing.
Sure.
So how, you don't have to be restricted to just the quarterback, but what are some ways that you have adapted your offense for players of different skill sets?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that when people start running the flex bone is there's so much stuff you can run because you can have wing T concepts. You can get to the eye and have eye concepts, and then you have all the triple option ability. So it's really about paring down and not trying to do too much so that you can execute. So you have flexibility from year to year to take certain aspects out of your offense and put other aspects in to fit your kids. Where we see that a lot is sometimes naturally your B-back or your fullback is going to get the most carries in your quarterback. But sometimes you have a slot that doesn't really fit that fullback role, but he's explosive, so you need to get him the ball. So then we have 20 different ways of getting him the ball that we have in our offense, but we're not going to have them all in every year. You know what I mean? So depending on is he a good inside runner? Is he a good outside runner? What are we trying to do? Then we try to package those schemes year to year with what we're going to choose. So within your system, looking at what your talent is and trying to emphasize that talent and having enough stuff that you're multiple, but not trying to run it all every year. If you don't have that slot that year, you don't want that stuff in the package. You throw it away for a year, you come back to it. And then obviously for us, the emphasis we put on the passing game allows us when we do have a quarterback or some talented receivers to take advantage of that too. When we first took over at Eastern, they had been a air raid spread team. So we had some pretty talented receivers, and the quarterbacks we inherited could throw the ball. So we threw the ball more because of that. And because we threw the more, that enabled us to continue recruiting good receivers because we could show our receivers film of them scoring touchdowns and show them stats that they were getting catches, show them that they were all conference. So that kind of helped us continue. And then we kind of knew that we wanted to continue to have a quarterback, even though we'd all like to have that great athlete. We want to have a guy who is a competent passer as well. So that if we get a guy that can really throw it, we can kind of morph that way. And it's kind of funny in the option world. When I first started, we used to get kids to play quarterback in the option world that were, at the JUCO or Division II level that were probably Division I athletes, but nobody wanted them to play quarterback. They wanted them to play running back, wide receiver, DB, and we could say, yeah, and they wanted to be quarterbacks. We could get them, so we had these great athletes at quarterback. Well, all those guys now are playing quarterback. So they're playing quarterback in the spread because there's so much quarterback run. So a lot of times we have a hard time recruiting those really great athletes that we used to get because they're getting the Division I offers to play quarterback now. So now you see us option guys playing with more of a pro style type quarterbacks, the guys that can throw the ball a little bit. But obviously if you're in our system, you have to be extremely tough, both mentally and physically, because you're going to run the ball. You're going to run the ball. So we're always looking for a guy that's a great leader, mentally tough and physically tough when he runs the ball. He doesn't have to be the fastest guy in the field anymore. He can be just an okay runner, but if he'll get north-south, He'll protect the ball. He'll fight for yards. We can live with those kind of guys as long as he can throw the ball too. You know what I mean? And so we can, it seems like we can find a lot of those guys. So it's funny how the option teams have kind of morphed from playing with sometimes the best athlete on the field is your quarterback, to just a more typical quarterback now that's running the option, a more of a point guard distributor type player at that position.
So maybe this next question doesn't apply to you so much as a college coach, because you can actually recruit your players for the offense that you run.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to take this question to a direction of like, what are some tips you would give a high school coach who wants to run the option? So what are some tips you would give high school coaches who want to run the option for selling the option offense to, you got to sell your offense to the players, you got to sell it to the parents, and
Sure.
sometimes you have to sell it to the community. So what are some tips you would give the high school coaches?
Well, one is be very meticulous, detailed, and put a big emphasis on execution. Because whatever you get out there and run, if you execute, people are going to buy into it. You know what I mean? So you've got to do your part there, and that helps sell it. Because if you execute, you probably got a better chance to win. Win as you win, obviously that's going to help sell it, because then you're going to get buy-in, because at the end, everyone wants to win. But some of the things that we did, during that time is have college coaches that run this system talk to your kids, because a lot of us really take a lot of pride in the system, and we're always the option world. They're really friendly and willing to help out. So, you get some option guys talking to your kids. So how many times do they get to talk to a college coach? Well, now you got an option guy talking to them, or, show them Navy, show them Army, show them our stuff, show them, get film and show them people being successful. I mean, I know a few years ago, Citadel took Alabama to half, almost tied. Well, even though our kids are ingrained in this system and believe in it, we've had a lot of success. I reached out to my friend Rod Boyd at Citadel and was lucky enough to get that film, because during camp, we wanted to show our guys, here's Alabama, as good as it comes defense, and here's Citadel playing up, going toe-to-toe with them. You know what I mean? And a lot of it's because of the scheme. They were putting their kids in great situations, and their kids were being extremely physical. So even at our level, we do that. We show them other people being successful running our offense. And if you see a Citadel beat a Georgia Tech, or when Georgia Southern beat Florida a few years ago, when those teams knock off those, we love to get those films and show them to our guys. And I think if you show them to high school kids and they see teams that aren't supposed to be beating teams and running the system, then you get some buy-in. The other thing is too, I think the throwing the ball piece of it, I think, like Paul Johnson always said, when we throw, we mean it. You know what I mean? If you throw the ball and you have some big plays, a lot of teams, the spread is very exciting, but, sometimes they get tired of seeing 4-yard out routes over and over. You know what I mean? And so, some home run balls and that. And then we've always liked to run some trick plays. I think that's fun for kids to practice. I think if you call them in the right situation, they can be highly successful, and fans like that. And it kind of gets them out of the mentality of you're coaching boring football. If you're willing to throw the ball deep every now and then, you're willing to run some reverses, some reverse pass and flea flickers. That's exciting. And fans, community people, they like that. So then they don't think of it as this boring 3 yards every play type of offense. And yeah, there's times when you want to buckle down and eat up the clock, and you want to do those things. But I think having a little bit in there and showing the willingness to do that goes a long way when you're selling it to your kids, your community, your alumni, administrators, things like that.
All right. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time tonight, Coach. I have one last question for you, and it's a pretty simple one. It's why Eastern New Mexico? What makes it the right fit for you?
Well, I think it's been a great fit for me because I was born and raised in New Mexico. Like I said, my father's a Hall of Fame high school coach nationally, but in all of his years were in New Mexico. I coached high school ball in New Mexico. So I got a ton of recruiting ties here, coached here as a GA. We're able to run the option at Eastern, which levels the playing field. The wind blows in Portales. So sometimes that's a great advantage to us because some teams that really want to throw the ball have a hard time. But, we always talk about our philosophy is take what you have with what you are, make something of it, never be satisfied. So I think what we have are great people in our program, great assistant coaches, great kids. Our kids, we've led the conference in GPA 6 out of the last 8 years. We got some great human beings in our program. And I think that is what drives us. And I think that the opportunity to work with those young men and play with a chip on our shoulder and go out and kind of, try to win one for the little guy is a rallying cry for us. And I think it's been a great fit for us. So, yeah, that's what our Greyhound football and the ground strike and our program, both offensively and D. We've talked pretty much about our offense here, but we play some really good defense down at Eastern New Mexico, and our kids are relentless, play extremely hard, physical. Again, we're not the biggest, but we play really hard. We pride ourselves in stopping the run. We pride ourselves in being aggressive, and I think the one trademark of our program and why Eastern and why it's so much fun is our kids play with fanatical effort, and I think they're fun to watch because you always love seeing those kids that play hard.
All right, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun to talk a little Greyhound football, a little ground strike.
Awesome. Well, this has been Coach Sheffer, and we are signing off.